Alright, so today what we're going to do is we're going to build this interface. This interface is meant to like basically make a haiku, okay? And so there's this haiku called Winter, which, I'm not very good at haikus here, but goes like this. I wake reluctant, too cold to get out of bed, but I need to pee. So then the idea here is that we can make that haiku and it'll show up something like this, right? Where winter is in the title and it has the haiku, and then we can click OK or we can clear it. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to make this interface, all right? And to kind of explain how this is going to work, this is actually a mix of different layouts that we got introduced to yesterday. All right, so let's go back over to that where we're talking about layouts. Okay, so flow layout we don't have to really worry about. Here's a grid layout. Okay, so grid layout gives you a certain number of rows and columns, and everything is kind of evenly spaced within that grid. So this is a grid layout with 3 rows and 4 columns. If I go back over to here, you can kind of see by when I resize this that these labels and these text fields are in a grid. Okay, they're in a 4-row, 2-column grid, and so we can kind of see how that works, that those are connected together, but the buttons are not. So when I resize this, these text fields get bigger, but the buttons stay the same size. Okay, and so they're in a different layout. They're actually in a flow layout, and those are combined together inside of what we call a border layout. So a border layout looks like this, and we talked about it yesterday. If we don't use the west and we don't use the east, or whatever we don't use just kind of gets cut off. Okay, so what we have in this example is a grid layout in the center and a flow layout of buttons in the south. Is that making sense? Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to discuss how to basically combine those together, and the way that we do that is using panels. Okay, so I've added another page onto here so you can read about panels if you need to, and then I'll post a video for this on there as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we're going to make a new class inside of our GUI project, and we're going to call this thing haiku frame. Okay, so I want that haiku frame to extend javax.swing.jframe, and I want it to have a main method. Okay, so if you ever finish kind of like before you had everything filled in, remember that you can always like type this stuff in for yourself. So if you forgot to put extends the superclass JFrame in the dialog that we were just looking at, you can just type it in and import it, and that'll be fine. Okay, you can type in your main method, so don't worry about that. So we're going to go new haiku frame in here, so that when we run this, it creates the haiku frame for us. Okay, then up here we're going to create the components for the frame. Okay, and I'm just going to minimize this so that it's not distracting and we got just the code on there. Okay, so what components did you guys see on that frame that I was just showing you? Text fields, okay, buttons, and then labels. All right, so just the basic components that we learned the other day, same ones that you used for the cheer frame. Okay, so we want 4 labels, 4 text fields, and 2 buttons. So I'm going to go ahead and go JLabel. So the 4 things that the user has to enter to make that haiku is, number 1, the title, then haikus have 3 lines. So line 1, line 2, and line 3. So I'm going to call this JLabel title L. Okay, so I always will put an L at the end of anything that identifies a label for me. So that's a new JLabel, if I could type. All right, and this is for the title, so I want that to have the text title in there. All right, and then, especially for you guys who are not the fastest typers, okay, get used to copying and pasting. So Command, if you highlight all that and use Control C on your keyboard, we want 4 labels, so I'm going to paste this in, but I'm going to even make it easier on myself. I'm going to go like this. This is my line 1 label. Just paste it right back in. And I'm going to change that to line 1. Okay. Then I'm going to copy that, right, and just paste that in 2 more times. Make this line 2 and line 3. So Control C copies and Control V pastes. Yep. V. It would be nice if it was P, but Control P actually is a print. Okay, so we also want those JText fields. So I need one for the title TF. I'll always do TF at the end of my text field identifiers. Now, for the last couple interfaces, we talked about putting a number in here for the text field. If you anticipate using a text field in a grid layout, okay, the grid will basically set the size of that text field for you. All right, so same thing, I'm going to copy that. Change this to line 1, and then copy that. Paste it in 2 more times, change this to line 2 and line 3. All right, and then we need 2 buttons. So J button, I need a clear button, so I'm going to call it clear B. You don't have to have all caps for your buttons, but I just like doing that, so. And then we're going to have the make button that's going to make our haiku. And then just to remind you guys, you can import like a bunch of things at once by holding down Control and Shift and then typing an O. So I just imported all that stuff at once. So it's important for you guys to understand that what we're doing here is just creating those components, but we haven't like added them to our frame yet. So if we run this class, we're not going to see anything. Okay, so if we create an object out of haiku frame, we're not going to see anything. So what we need to do is use the constructor to set how the frame will look. Okay, so we're going to go public haiku frame. Okay, so it has the same name as the class, something that you should remember. And then inside of there, we're going to go ahead and say this, which refers to the frame itself, set layout. Okay, so one thing I want to point out to you guys, if you're one of those people who's like not the quickest typer, as soon as you start doing like set L for this, it'll give you all of the things that a frame can do that start with set L. So if I want to set layout, I can use the arrow keys to kind of figure out which one it is, hit enter on the keyboard, and then that maybe will save me some time. Okay? Yeah, you can do Control Z to undo. Good? Yeah, you bet. Okay, so what we talked about earlier is that we want the frame to have a border layout, because we're going to add the labels and text fields to the center, and then we're going to add the buttons to the south. Okay? So So I'm doing new border layout. We'll have to import border layout, but we'll do that in a second. Okay. So let me just kind of point out like what the problem is here. All right. So if I wanted to add like the labels and the text fields to the center, and I just tried to do it normally, I guess, it would look something like this. So I'm going to go this.add. We're going to end up changing this a little bit, so maybe you don't have to like copy this down right now, but just pay attention. So this.add, we're going to go title L, so I want that label on there, okay? And then I'm going to do this.pack and this.set visible true, okay? Let me import border layout. So let's run this. Okay, so there's my title label, right? So the next thing that I want to add is I want to add my title text field. All right, and if I run that, so we kind of saw this problem before. So now I just get the text field. So what I need is I need a way to add those things in so that they'll all fit into that one space. All right. And so let me just get back to here because this is where you guys are. Basically then what we're going to do is we're going to create a panel. Okay. We're going to add the components that we want to that panel. And then we're going to add the panel to the center of the layout. Okay. So that goes like this. We're going to go Jpanel. Okay. And this is for creating my haiku, so I'm going to call this haiku panel. All right. And that's going to be equal to a new Jpanel. And I want that panel to have a grid layout. So inside of here, I'm going to go new grid layout. And remember, there's title, line 1, line 2, line 3. So there's 4 rows. And then there's a label and a text field next to each other, so there's 2 columns. So this is a 4x2 grid. Okay. So guys, I'm going to go ahead and import Jpanel and grid layout by doing Control-Shift-O. And so let me just give you guys some notes right here, okay? Panels are used to hold multiple components in their own layout. Okay? So we use panels to basically mix, different layouts and group components. Okay? We set the layout like when we create it. So when we do new Jpanel, we tell it what the layout should be right there. You technically don't have to do that, but it's really the easiest way to do it. So, and so in this case, a 4-row, 2-column grid. Okay. After we've created the panel, then we can go ahead and add things to it. Okay. So we're going to add components to the panel, and that's going to look like this. We're going to go haiku panel dot add, and then the first thing that we want to add is the title label. Okay. And we're going to go haiku panel dot add. We want the title text field. Okay. So I'm going to just look up here for a second. I know you guys are trying to catch up to me. I'll give you time to catch up in a second. Okay. I'm going to copy those two lines. So copy with the keyboard, paste, and then I'm going to change this to line 1, line 1. Then I'm going to copy those, paste that 2 more times, and just change that to 2, 2, 3, 3. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and catch up. So what's important to understand here is what we've done right here is created this panel. Okay, you can't see panels on your like unless you like set the background of them to like a color or whatever. You can't see panels, so they're really just there to kind of group things together. Okay, and what we've done here is we've added all of those components to that panel. And because of this new grid layout right here, those things are going to be in that grid, okay, added in that order. All right, so then the next thing that we want to do is after we've added the components to the panel, we want to add the panel to the frame. All right, and so the way that we do that is we go this, that's the frame, dot add haiku panel. Okay, so let me just tell you, I'm kind of purposely leaving something off of here that we should have because I want to show it to you later on. But if you add in the this.pack and this.setVisible now, okay, when you run this, okay, we get that panel on there, and it's got all of our labels and text fields on it. Okay? You guys with me so far? All right. So this looks a little bit different than what we looked at a second ago, right? Or not a second ago, but at the beginning of the class, right? Like these text fields are not big enough for typing in a poem, right? So this is a situation where maybe we don't want to use pack. Okay, maybe we want to use set size in this case. So I'm going to change pack to set size. And when we set the size of the frame, we have to tell it the width that we want it to be and the height that we want it to be. Okay, so if I do 400, 200, and I run this again, okay, I won't say that that looks great, but the text fields are at least big enough where I think I can like fill in part of the poem. Okay? So that's the difference there. Do you mind grabbing that? Alright. So, what I would like you guys to do next is try to add your buttons to the south of the frame. Okay? And so what I want you to do is I want you to make another Jpanel, give it an appropriate name. Remember that we're putting buttons on it. Okay? Set it to have a flow layout. Add the buttons to it, and then try adding it to the frame. You guys following me? Okay, so we're going to make another panel for the buttons. Okay, we're going to add the buttons to the panel, so it's just like we added the labels and text fields to this one, and then add the panel to the frame. All right, so do that right there. Okay, so let's do this together. Some of you are done with it already, and maybe frustrated because of the fact that just your buttons show up. And if you weren't really sure what to do, let's do it together here. Okay. So first thing that we're going to do again is we're going to create a new Jpanel. Okay. So I'm going to call that button P or button panel. Okay. Equals new Jpanel. And in this case, what I ask you guys to do is make it into a flow layout. Okay. So that's fine if you didn't do something else. If you did something else, it doesn't really matter too much what kind of layout that is. But if you want to keep it like mine, then make it a flow layout. Then what we want to do is we want to add the components that we want in that layout or in that panel. So we're going to go button panel dot add, and the thing that I want to add first is the cancel button, cancel B, okay, and then button panel dot add, and the next thing is the make B. All right. Oh, clear. Sorry about that. Clear B. Okay, so then after I have this panel, it's kind of like it's just floating out here and I've got buttons in it. I want to add it to my frame. So I'm going to go this dot add button panel. And so now that I'm adding that button panel, let's see what this looks like. Oops. Oh, I didn't import flow layouts. Let me do that quick. Just did that with the keyboard. And there's my haiku frame, except the crap that I added before in my haiku panel got kicked out. Okay, so remember, like, this is the first thing that I showed you guys when we started doing frames. I said if we add one thing and then add another thing, the first thing will get kicked out. Okay, so then we added layouts so that we could add more than one thing. Now we're adding panels, and we're trying to build this on top of a border layout. Okay, when we add things to a border layout, we have to tell it where we want it added. Okay, so the haiku panel we want added to the center. So up here where I'm doing this dot add haiku panel, we're going to change this now and we're going to go comma and tell it where to go. So border layout dot center is where I want that thing to go. Okay, and then this one, the button panel, where do I want that one to go? Into the south. Good. So I want to go border layout dot south for that one. And once I make those changes and I add this, or I run this, I should say. Okay. Now it looks like that. So I have the grid layout in the center, and I have the two buttons in the south. Is this idea of making the different layouts kind of mixed together using panels, is that making sense for you guys? Seeing some heads nod, so that's good. All right, I'm not really worried about adding functionality to it today, but if you guys want to start doing that on your own, I'm going to do it tomorrow. Okay, so if you want to start doing the clear button and the make haiku button, you can start doing that right now, but we're going to pick up on that tomorrow, and then I'm going to give you guys an assignment tomorrow.